Spanish ways.
Hi everyone, welcome to Your Next Big Win, where we are going to talk about how to price your next big win. And this is something that we get asked about a lot. So something new, it could be a new business or it could be an existing business that's been around for a while and you're thinking, am I getting this about right? I've got something new I want to launch. So it's one of the most common things that we're asked about, isn't it, Mahmood?
Yeah, 100%. It's like if you could get inside your customer's head and figure out what they're willing to pay, life would be so much easier. But that sort of practice is not allowed.
No. So we're going to be talking about that. We've had a few questions in advance of the show, so we'll be answering those as we go. And we'll be back in a moment after we've rocked it out to our theme tune. Over to you, Mahmood.
Let's take it away. And as they say, we are back in the room. Yeah,
We are.
Joe, very common question, isn't it? Like people have got the idea about the market they want to serve, there's a product there, they've got an idea about how they're going to promote it, and then it says, "Oh, how much should I charge for this?" Probably something that should have been factored in at an earlier stage, but still a question that's worthwhile exploring.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I have to admit, this is something I find challenging for myself and easier to do for others, which I think is the case for many of us.
100%.
And I think sometimes it can be harder when it's a service, particularly a service that you are delivering yourself personally or your team are delivering that. And when it's a product, something tangible, it can be a bit easier, but it's not always easy. So we've had some questions, and if you're watching this and thinking, yeah, I sometimes find it hard to know where to pitch pricing for my new ideas, let us know why you think that is. And what's going on for you, and we will have a look at that and we'll answer your comments as we go. But I think there's something around, will people think it's too expensive? Will I put people off? Is it going to be too cheap? You know, all of those things, they're sort of more social and psychological issues, aren't they, in terms of our uncertainty around pricing rather than anything else. What do you think?
I think there's 2 or 3 things at play here. I think number one, a lot of people approach the pricing from their perspective, and they're outward looking. They're not inward looking, thinking about from the perspective of a customer about what they're likely to be buying into, the transformation, the pain points that will be solved. And number two, services by its very nature, they're not always consistent. They're not physical. We can't see that. And I think there's always that difficulty of pricing an experience, a service that you can't physically see as well. So I think there are 2 challenges. And I would always say, as a start point, people need to be more empathetic and put themselves in the shoes of the customer and approach it from that perspective, as opposed to looking outwards there as well. However, having said that, there are still some basic things you can do from a financial point of view, outward looking to factors into the pricing as well.
Yeah. And I think it's about doing all the things that we talked about actually on the previous show, which is benchmarking pricing, seeing what's out there, thinking about your costs, those sorts of things. But when you're doing something that's new and it's new to you, and it might be new to the market, you know, it's really considering, you know, the value of that, and you're right, how it's perceived by customers, isn't it? And what are you going to launch with, and what's the journey of that pricing likely to be over time? Are you going to launch high and then come down as it gets, you know, less exciting over the years, or are you going to go and, you know, with some introductory offers and then increase the pricing as you get more established? In fact, one of the questions, and thank you very much, you know who you are for asking this question. One of the questions we've had is, if I'm launching my services in different parts of a region, you know, in different towns and cities, do I have to charge the same thing in every town and in every city, or can I think about the local market conditions and charge differently? So, there are things like that, those sorts of variables to consider as well.
Interesting one. I think I'm going to look at your perspective. I think if it's a physical product as such, if you're not physically located in that place like London compared to the north, for example, then I think price differentials can send out the wrong signal or the rest of it, because there aren't any. Even though people that might have more disposable income, you can certainly reflect that in the type of pricing proposition that you put forward. I'm not a big fan in terms of services, depending how they're delivered. Certainly services, I think there's less of an argument for having, tiered pricing because you happen to live in an affluent part of the world compared to a less affluent part.
But then costs might be different.
Yeah, fair enough.
The lease on your property, the wages costs might be higher hourly rates, those sorts of things. So I can see that. It was a long time ago now, but one of my earlier leadership roles was in a supermarket, and I did the pricing strategy for tens of thousands of product lines in locations all around the country in different types of stores with the same brand. And we had convenience stores, big destination stores where people went and did a big shop, through to garage forecourts. And for a pint of milk or a litre of milk, that could be a different price depending on where you bought it, because the customer expectation was different. So I think there are things like that are expected and people understand because it's situational, and it's about taking all that into account, isn't it? And is it likely that someone is going to use your service in one town and use it in another, or are they completely different customers? Because if they're different, then you've got more of an argument for being able to charge a different amount.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I mean, I think from what I'm saying, if you've got something like an online service that's being consumed from a central hub, whether somebody buys it from London or whether they buy it from the north or wherever, there's not much of a strong argument there. If you've got a different distribution channel, if you've got physical distribution in different geographical areas and there are different input costs, then fine. I think you've got acceptable variation, depending on what you are. If you're talking retailing there, Joe, commonly, if you these like small metro type retailing shops, if they're next to railway stations, convenient hubs, they tend to be limited lines and more expensive than a sort of large retailing space as well.
It's convenience pricing, but then those properties are expensive to lease
100%.
because they've sort of got a guaranteed footfall. And I think when anyone's doing pricing for your next big win, it is different for business to consumer versus business to business, and then it depends what sort of business and what sector, what size of business you're selling to as well. Because and I find sometimes that, and I don't know if you find the same, that small businesses selling their products and services to big corporates sometimes find it challenging to know where to pitch it, and there's either the perception that they'll drive them down and want all the margin, or the perception that big corporates have loads of money, just pockets full of cash, and you charge what you like. And the answer is neither. It is sometimes either of those, but usually it's somewhere in the middle. We have to be fair and transparent with corporate clients as well.
100%. I think there is a differential between the two things. I think one thing that's coming out of our conversation here is that whatever you do, whatever the nature of the service and product, you've got to be really close and comfortable and being aware of what your costs are. Cost doesn't determine the final price, but if you ignore the costs, then you could be literally pricing at a point where you make a very low margin, if not losing money. You may not actually get that transparency that you need there. So I think you need to be comfortable and have an idea what those costs are. And I would typically take a life cycle approach, especially if you've got a product or a service that's got a finite period of time before it's replaced.
Yeah. And I think, when you read all the textbooks, they will talk about cost plus pricing and value-based pricing. So cost plus being this is how much it costs, and I'm going to add 10, 20, 50, 100, whatever it is percent on top, and that's my margin. Value-based pricing is where you say, well, this is the difference it's going to make to my customer. It's going to make a big difference to them or a small difference, and they're willing to pay for that difference or not. So that's value-based pricing. You're pricing it based on the transformation that you're going to create. And I actually think there's a hybrid of the two of those that we need to do, which is cost plus value pricing. And if my suggestion is that people start with this, and then they can do other things around it. But what are the costs? What value are you bringing? Make sure you cover your costs and get a good margin, but also make sure that the value and the transformation you're bringing for your customer is reflected in your pricing. And then once you've got that core thing, you can go in with buy one get one free or introductory offers, or you can play tunes on the promotional side of pricing, but think about those two things in combination, I think, to get the best of both worlds. I mean, does that stack up for you? Would you agree or disagree?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I think I like the cost plus value proposition. I think cost plus pricing has its place, and for certain commodities, it's a good way of doing it. The downs, because you've got a certainty. The downsides, the drawbacks to cost plus pricing is, I think, irrespective of where you are in your business cycle, however prosperous you are as a business, or however difficult things are, you should always be looking to manage costs as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
And the danger is people don't necessarily differentiate between fixed and committed costs, and those costs that will change according to how much they provide. Secondly, they don't actually challenge costs. If they're saying it costs me X, I'll add a percentage there. You've got to build in inefficiencies. There's no incentivization to drive prices down or to manage costs efficiently. But yeah, I think I'd probably add one thing to what you're saying now. I do like this idea of cost value.
Yeah, so that is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I'm saying you need to do your cost plus and make sure you cover your costs, and you need to charge for the value that you're bringing as well. So it's putting those two pricing approaches together. And I like your the point you're making is really, really essential in making sure your costs are as low as possible, without compromising the quality and all those sorts of things of your product or service. So I am actually recommending a combination of the two. But what I see is value-based pricing, and then people have got just turning a blind eye to cost and just picking a number and charging it. I think that's dangerous. But and there is some benchmarking to be done with the competition as well.
100%. And I think also there's I wouldn't call it a danger, and that's probably a bit dramatic there as well, is that when people ignore their costs, especially in services, you don't actually appreciate the resources that are required to deliver that product, deliver that service, etc. And therefore, some people are attracted by what I call high ticket items. So they're saying, I've got a product here that sells for 1,000. I've got a product here that sells for 400. Actually, I want to sell the £1,000 item because that's going to be better for me. But actually, that turnover element is quite redundant, because unless you know what the costs are in connection with that, you don't know the margins, then you're probably chasing something that actually will not generate as much profitability for you as maybe a lower ticket item.
Yeah. And I think it's about thinking about the message that you want to send to your customers with your pricing, because your pricing is a signal in a way of your confidence in what you're doing and the quality of what you're doing. I quite like it when people say to me that, Joe, you're reassuringly expensive. And but then I aim to deliver a quality of service and contribution and value that reflects that. So it's what you are, as long as you are good at what you do and you can deliver and exceed your promises, then I think it's really worthwhile remembering that your pricing says a lot about the perceived quality that you have of what you're offering.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I always think about that analogy in the hospitality sector, that if you go for a meal, family or friends, you sit down, and the cover price is probably more expensive than you would have liked, but actually the experience is good, the food tastes nice, the ambiance is good, the service quality is good, you tend not to complain too much. You think, great, there's value there. If it's priced much lower, okay, and you get a very bad experience here, and the customer service is pretty poor, then that could bite you in the bum, and you could become very disenchanted with what your offer is. So you're right. And I think selling something too cheap, when you say this is a quality offer, there's a disconnect psychologically in somebody's mind of thinking, hang on, this is supposed to be a really good experience I have by eating here, but you only charge me £5 a head. What's going on? Is this substandard food, or am I missing something?
Absolutely. So, and using your pricing, you can find space in the market as well. So if when you're launching your products and services, when I say you, by the way, Mahmood, I mean obviously everyone who's listening in right now. When you're doing that, if you do your research, and if you think, oh, actually the offer here, there's either some really expensive products and services, or it's either really expensive and a load of money, or very cheap and not great. There's actually some space here for, a middle of the range, good, solid quality, but not all singing or dancing, Louis Vuitton sort of offer. Then actually that's a space I can go into and have a look at that in terms of plugging a gap in the market, or looking at the other ends, and I think it's useful to look at good, better, best pricing, having a value price, an entry point, a middle price, which is the standard one that most people will go for, and then having a high end offer. So having and that helps as well, because it creates what we call a reference point. So people have got something to compare what they're getting against, and we know psychologically that people are more likely to buy and when you offer them 3 things, and when you offer them a reference point to compare pricing to. But good, better, best is a great way to go if you're launching something.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking about an example that links back to your days as well. I always like supermarkets as an example, and I use this quite a lot when I talk to people about their sort of financial sort of planning, is that you have to look at the mix of what you're doing as well. So unless you're a single product or a single service and you have no differentials between type of customer or type of service, then it's a single product, this won't apply. But in that old supermarket analogy, as you go in to buy that commodity like a loaf of bread or a pint of milk, as you walk into the store with all the psychology that goes on with colors, noise, smells, you're going to go through that customer journey here, and you're going to pick up items to put into your basket, which are higher value and higher margin for the supermarket, until you get to the end of the store where you buy your bread and milk, which is typically of a lower value, lower margin. But the supermarket is looking at the overall mix that they can get there. And that's, I would say, it's a very good analogy for me, for your business as well.
Well, everybody understands it, because everybody has hopefully shopped for themselves at some point, and maybe does it regularly. It's called basket analysis, and you see what's in the basket. Also, there's something around thinking about the products that go together. So, I'm trying to think of, custard, things you might put custard with. A tinned custard might be a higher margin product than, I don't know, something else. But so the pairings of products, buy this and this, and if that's cheap, they'll buy this to go with it, and that's where we make the margin. So that sort of,
it's that bundle pricing type thing.
Yeah. And also on shelves, using a diamond way of merchandising. And I say this because I think there are ways we can adapt, all of us, whatever we do, there are ways we can adapt these concepts. So when you're looking at a supermarket, a row of shelves in the supermarket, lots of product, think about the diamond shape, and the things that they want you to buy are in that diamond, the things that are important for the supermarket to buy, because that's your space. The really cheap, low margin, own brand Weetabix might be at the bottom right hand corner, where you have to bend down, or something else might be where you reach up to the top, because if you have to really want it to go and get it. So it's things about how it relates to everything else you're doing, where it's going to sit. Do you want it? Are you launching this to support something else? Is something else going to support this? All of those things, just work through and see the bigger picture, rather than, is this too much or is it too little, and I'm just going to pick a number.
I think you're right there. I think it's very complex. I think what underpins things like supermarkets, well, they do very well at what they do, and also things like airline companies that do things like dynamic pricing, there's an underbelly of having good financial systems, good data capture, that they can actually analyze what's going on and actually have that understanding by which product groups or products are doing well, which services are not doing well. And I think that helps inform those final decisions about how things are grouped, what products they should push, what they should focus on. So it's amazing. I don't know if you found it yourself, Joe, how many businesses out there don't have what I call good information systems, good information architecture, where they can actually capture that level of data and actually analyze it and actually evaluate it and use it.
Yeah, and there's some great data we can get in terms of websites. What are people clicking on? What are they interested in? which are our biggest customers? Have we got customers in a certain sector? Could we approach other customers that are in that sector? Are they in a group of companies, and we're doing business with one part of that group? Could we ask that group to recommend us to other parts? So it's really using that data to see how we can expand and how we can repeat that success. That's what we're looking to do, isn't it? Is to avoid spending time and effort on things that aren't bringing return for us, and exit those or deal with those quickly, so that we can spend more time on the things that are working.
100%. Now, folks, listen, if you, I don't know how you price your products and services, we'd love to know there. If you want to leave a comment that me and Joe want to pick up later on, just put hashtag replay on that. It will come up into the feed and we can respond to it accordingly. And we're redacting something that's quite a big body of practical knowledge, academic research, psychology, and all the rest of it in a very short space of time. So please, if there are any questions coming from this, let us know. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, and I think there is psychology used in a lot of websites. So have a look at if you're an online business, or if you're selling product or service online, have a look at some of the brands that you think are relevant to you and that you respect in the space, and that are doing well. And you've got some evidence they're doing well. They're not just saying they're doing well, and see what you can learn in terms of their pricing, how they're positioning. I mean, when you buy software as a service, there are always 3 options. There's usually a free trial, and then there's like an entry option, and then there might be a high level option. Sometimes there's a 4th sort of enterprise option, which is price on application. If you're a huge global business, ring us and we'll do you a deal, or email us and we'll do you a deal. But you'll see 3 or 4 different options. Have a look at online shops. I've bought something. I have a friend, a lovely friend, and she's not doing really very well. I've lots of friends. She's not doing very well, and I wanted to buy her something online for a local business to be delivered to her home. And it's really important to me that it was local. And I've ordered it, and no idea when it's going to be delivered. No opportunity to leave a gift message. Those sorts of things. So what I would say as a small business is it's really easy to get those sorts of things sorted out, and I would pay more to know that thing's going to get there safely on a certain day with a nice gift message, but I wasn't offered the option. So when you're thinking about the pricing, think about upsell, think about what else you can offer to go with your thing, that extra bit of service, that extra accessory or whatever it is that's going to add into that overall basket, because it's really easy to do with the online tools.
100%.
Yeah.
And there's a follow-up stuff as well. And I think what a lot of people can easily bring to this whole conversation about pricing is pretty much everybody is a customer for something. So you think about the things that stimulate you to buy something, what are the triggers in you? And, I think having a bit more empathy with your customer and their buying habits and things that you can do, and looking at competitors, looking at other industries that might not be your direct competitors, see how they do things and how they easily get the money out of your wallet or your bank account, is something you should study and actually try and transfer that and apply that knowledge to your own business.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's, I think we get too hung up on pricing, because pricing as well, as long as you don't have everything, it's not on your packaging, and you have a big packaging run, and then it's going to cost you thousands to redo your packaging. Do you really need your pricing on permanently printed on your packaging? Yeah, probably not. Then you can change it. You can change it, and you can try different things, and you can try bundling things. So see it as something. Start somewhere, do your homework, start somewhere, give it a go, measure it, see how it goes, and then think about how you might want to flex it up, flex it down, and bundle in other things.
Yeah, don't procrastinate too much. As Joe said, it's a combination of trial and error. Your first price might not be the price that you do in a month's time, 2 months' time there as well. But you've got to commit yourself to a price. Make sure you're aware of what those costs are that you're experiencing. Obviously, plan them out and see what you can sustain. And yeah, that's a good way of doing it. And measure it and monitor it and review it. And life is always about evolving. I'm sure your prices,
Yeah.
Joe, are not the same now as they were when you first started.
No, they're not.
And I'll be gobsmacked if they were.
Yeah, and nor should they be. And also,
Exactly.
what I'm offering has changed. You know, there's the offers broadened and all those sorts of things. So yeah, just go for it. I think, and then be prepared to sort of stand behind it and ask for your price with confidence
Yeah.
and commitment. And what we don't want anyone to do is to do that thing. And I've done it like loads, and I've stopped doing it a long time ago, but I've done it a lot in my previous earlier days, which is to say, okay, so this is how much it is. And then, but for you, I'm going to do it for this straight away, you know, and then sort of reneging and starting to, and the customer might have been very happy with what you first offered. So sometimes we can talk ourselves out of things. So it's really important to get ourselves, particularly if we're, you know, talking to customers on the phone or face to face or whatever, is get ourselves committed to and believing in what we do and knowing that the customer's going to get great value and we're going to get a fair return.
100%. Be confident in what you offer, because if you're not confident and you start quickly changing your prices, going to a reduction, what's the perception? Your perception would be, if it was you, can I actually trust this person? Are they actually that confident in what they're doing? So stick to it. Sometimes, being silent, for a few seconds is a very powerful way of dealing with it.
Yeah, feels like eternity.
Yeah.
But actually, there are bodies of research that show that when we pause and think for a moment and reflect, people think we're brainier and we're more talented. So that's a good reason to just stop and have a moment, isn't
I
it?
might try that. I might get away with it.
Yeah. So I think there's quite a few things there, but we're also, really keen to hear from you. If you want any sort of specific tips or advice, reach out to us. Have a look on the nextbigwin.co.uk website. We've got a great quiz on there for you as well. And it takes a few minutes and it'll give you some insights. But
100%.
yeah, we're here to help. So do let us know and we'll do our best to help you.
Brilliant. Folks, listen, I hope you found this useful. Let us know what your thoughts are. Share some feedback, put that hashtag replay, and we will see you folks next week. So until then, we'll see you on the other side.
See you soon.
See you soon. Let's play out with that wonderful music.